Picture this, a photograph so powerful it wins the world's most prestigious prize, yet sparks a massive outcry. One image that set off controversy, heartbreak, and some serious soul searching. Here's what it forced us to ask. What's the real cost of capturing these moments? What does it actually mean to be behind that lens? For South African photojournalist Kevin Carter, one moment would come to define everything. It brought him fame, sure, but it also brought fury and recognition that came with unbearable weight. His image showed the world famine, but behind that camera was a man slowly falling apart. This is the story of that photograph, the man who took it, and the impossible choices that come with documenting the world's pain. Photojournalism isn't just about freezing a moment in time, it's the front line of truth-telling. A single shot from a war zone, a disaster, or a protest can completely change how the world sees suffering, injustice, or hope. Sometimes one frame asks questions that 1,000 words just can't touch. But here's the thing, having that power to document comes with some serious ethical minefields. When does simply watching become exploitation? When is standing back the right call? And when does it cross into being complicit? Behind every iconic photo that's moved nations, there's usually a complex, hidden story. Kevin Carter's is one of those stories. He wasn't working alone either. Carter was part of this fearless group of photographers called the Bang Bang Club. They were documenting the brutal final years of apartheid in South Africa. These guys believed in the power of images to wake people up, to stir conscience. But their works kept raising this haunting question. What does it cost the person behind the camera? By 1993, Sudan was a country in crisis. A vicious civil war had been tearing the nation apart for decades, and famine was sweeping through the southern regions. Entire communities were on the move. Food supplies had collapsed, and international aid was struggling just to keep up. Kevin Carter was one of the few foreign photographers brave enough to venture into the region. He traveled with the UN to this remote village called Ayod, where planes would drop sacks of grain to desperate crowds. The landscape? Dry, choked with dust, and heartbreakingly quiet. Now, Carter was known for his raw honesty and this restless energy. Along with his colleagues, Giles Silver, Greg Marinovich, and Ken Osterbrook, the Bang Bang Club, he'd already witnessed unspeakable violence back in South Africa. But Sudan hit differently. This was a slow death and starvation, all happening in real time. For Carter, this wasn't just about getting the story. He wanted to force the world to actually look. Then came that March afternoon in Ayod, when he encountered the scene that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The child was alone, severely malnourished, crawling slowly toward a UN feeding station just meters away, and behind her, a vulture had landed. Just watching, waiting. Kevin Carter saw this scene unfolding and froze. He later said he spent over 20 minutes just standing there, wrestling with what to do. As a journalist, his job was clear: document what's happening. But as a human being, he was torn apart. Should he step in? Should he carry her to safety? Was help already on the way? Would jumping in actually make things worse? Eventually, he took the photo. Then he said he chased the vulture away and watched as the child kept crawling. She made it to the feeding center. The New York Times published that image and it ricocheted around the globe. Stark, symbolic. It didn't show blood or violence, but its quiet brutality said absolutely everything. A year later, it won the Pulitzer Prize for feature photography. But you know what came with that honor? A flood of outrage. As the image spread worldwide, readers had questions, lots of them. What happened to the child? Why didn't Carter help? The reports were all over the place. Some outlets said the girl survived. Others claimed she died shortly after. Years later, another journalist said the child was actually a boy who had survived. The truth? Still unclear, but here's what's happened. That image became something much bigger than itself, a lightning rod for this massive ethical debate. Carter got thousands of letters. Some people praised him for bringing attention to the crisis. Others called him a monster for not intervening. At a time when media ethics were already under intense scrutiny, his photograph became the ultimate case study. Carter tried to defend himself. He explained that aid workers were nearby. He talked about disease risks, mentioned protocols, but the criticism cut deep. He'd hoped the photo would spark action, get people to help. Instead, it brought judgment and guilt that he couldn't quite shake. Friends started noticing his mental health was declining. He became withdrawn, isolated. Remember, he was already carrying years of trauma from conflict zones in South Africa. Now this one image added what felt like the final crushing weight. Just 4 months after winning the Pulitzer, Kevin Carter took his own life. In his final notes, he wrote about being haunted by memories of starving or wounded children, of trigger-happy madmen. Now here's something we need to understand. Witnessing suffering over and over changes you. Conflict photographers, just like first responders and war medics, often carry these invisible wounds. Today we recognize PTSD, secondary trauma, and something called moral injury in these professions. But back in Carter's time, mental health was rarely discussed, let alone treated. His story reminds us that people behind these cameras aren't just detached observers. They're absorbing the pain they're documenting, and sometimes it consumes them. But it also brings up these deeper questions that we're still grappling with. What's the real responsibility of a photojournalist? Is it to report the truth, no matter how painful? Or should they step in and help, even if it means putting down the camera? There's no easy answer here, but Carter's photograph keeps forcing us to wrestle with these questions. Despite all the controversy, Carter's image did something that few photographs ever accomplished. It shifted the world's attention. It brought international focus to Sudan's famine. Aid organizations saw donations surge, and it forced the public to really grapple with the ethics of suffering and storytelling. Since then, things have changed in photojournalism. Many journalism schools now teach trauma ethics and mental health resilience. Newsrooms are more aware of how these images affect both audiences and the people capturing them. But those questions Carter left behind, they're still echoing today. Who gets to tell these stories? Where's the line between raising awareness and exploitation? And when we look at a photograph like Carter's, are we actually seeing the child or just our own reflection staring back? Look, this story isn't easy to sit with, but it's one we do need to talk about. Every photograph like Carter's forces us to face the human cost of conflict and honestly examine our own role as viewers. I'd really like to hear what you think about this. What are your thoughts on ethical dilemmas photojournalists face? How would you balance witnessing versus helping? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. This kind of conversation does matter. If this story resonated with you, consider supporting journalism that puts empathy and truth at the center. If you want to see more thoughtful deep dives into photography, art, and ethics, hit subscribe and come along for the journey. Photography has incredible power to change the world, but with that power comes profound responsibility, something we all need to remember.